One last little section that I want to get into. Excuse the noise outside too. There's a lot of snowplows going around. So I might be asking you to give me the equation, or give equation of square root function when given the graph. Okay. So an equation or a question like this might come up, and the important thing to notice is piecing together what information is given to you. Okay, so let's say I give you a graph. There's two different things that you need to notice before you even go about approaching the problem. The first being, well, okay, let me figure out exactly what type of graph I'm dealing with. So let's say I give you a graph that looks like this, okay? Where I notice that, hey, there's only one little piece to it. I think what's important is to first identify what type of graph it is. In this case, this is a square root graph, okay? That's the first step. Second step, identify your starting point, okay? So the starting point in this is going to be the point right here, okay? Let's say that I make this point at 1, 0. Okay? My starting point in a square root function corresponds to my h and k, right? It's how much I'm shifting left and right and up and down. So since if I'm at 1, 0, that means I shifted to the right 1 from my parent function, and I didn't shift anything up or down. Okay? That's important to notice. So I know that h is 1. So in essence, what I can do is I can start, let me put this starting point down. I can start by giving my general square root graph function. Looks like that. And I'm going to start plugging in stuff when I find it. Okay, h I know is 1, so I know that my equation is going to look something like this. Okay, and in fact, we already know what k is. K is 0, so I'm just going to get rid of that. So I've got something like this. Okay, the only way for me to get the full equation is by identifying another point on the graph. So let's say I give you another point, and I'm going to make that point something like 3, 6. Okay, let's say that's 3, 6, hypothetically. Okay, if I'm given that point, I'm going to take my equation that I have right now, and I'm going to take the x and y value of my other point, plug it in, and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to take 3, 6, and I'm going to use it. How I'm going to use it is by taking the 3 and plugging it in for x, and the 6 and plugging it in for y. So I get 6 equals a times the square root of 3 minus 1. Okay, this ends up not being nice, but that's okay. So in this case, I am going to simplify this down a little more. 3 minus 1 will give me the 2. So I've got 6 being a times the square root of 2. If I'm wanting to get a by itself, I'm just going to divide by square root of 2, which gives me that a is equal to 6 over the square root of 2, which is the same thing as 6 root 2 over 2, or 3 root 2. Okay, that's my a value. Okay, this isn't very nice looking, but we'll make it a little nicer looking in a second. So let me erase these first. I'm going to go over to the left side. I know what my a is. It's 3 root 2. I'm going to plug that back in. So I got y equals 3 root 2. That's my a value, times the square root of x minus 1. And that is my final function. And I was given 2 points on the graph. I was able to determine what the equation that corresponded to the graph was. Okay, that's how you would do finding the square root function when given a graph. I'm only going to ask finding the square root function. I'm not going to ask finding the cube root, but that is the general process of how you would do it. Let's recap. Determine my starting point. Okay, that corresponds to your starting value of your square root function graph. Okay, it's going to be labeled to you. Write out the general form of a square root function. Plug in your starting point in for h and k. Use the point that you're given to plug it in for x and y to solve for your a value. And then take your a and plug it back in into your equation and then you'll be able to get your equation of your graph.